Peter or Kate, do either of you want to say anything before I launch in?
Welcome. I got my first mosquito bites today. No, I'll let you go. I'll let you go, Steve. I don't have anything prepared, and I don't want to hold people up. So
Okay.
everybody here is pretty entrenched in climate action already.
Well, it appears to be the case. And I guess what I'll do is I want to go through this. I won't go through in excruciating detail because a lot of you have heard some of this before. But we want to provide a recording for folks that may come along after tonight or while you're all out there talking to folks. And we want to make sure that they have a way of getting some context. And we'll be able to point them to the meeting #1 council chamber video as well, if they want to take a deeper dive, or they can talk to any of us. So for the purpose of the recording, my name is Steve Whitman. I represent Resilience Planning and Design. We're one of the members of the consulting team assisting the city of Portsmouth on the Portsmouth Climate Future Climate Action Plan. So what I'm going to do is we want to move through this agenda and present some material and introduce the Climate Ambassador Guide. I'll pause a couple times if there are questions. We're a small enough group. Feel free to try to get my attention if you think there's something I've missed or you have a clarification you think we should make. And then I'll pull up the Climate Ambassador Guide and kind of walk you through it. And then we're going to be providing this to all of you after tonight. So I think we're a fairly small group. I don't know that we have to do introductions in the chat box, which had been my plan if we were much bigger. But I think you could probably see everybody on your screen if you want to put them in gallery view. Okay, so a little bit on project purpose and background, a little bit on the planning process and the engagement we have planned. Some of this will be a reminder. We will talk a little bit more tonight about what a climate ambassador is or what we're thinking it is. And if you have additional thoughts, we're open to that. How to sign up. I think most of you, we have your email at least once, but how other people can also sign up if they'd like to be an ambassador or if they simply just want to get updates on the climate action planning process. And then we'll basically look at the guide, answer questions, and send you on your way. So we limited this primarily to a slide. What we wanted to do was kind of provide some context on the climate action plan, which has been titled Portsmouth's Climate Future. And we give a little bit of an overview. For people that do see this recording and it's not enough, as I mentioned earlier, the city of Portsmouth hosted earlier this month a meeting to kind of kick off the climate action plan process. And that meeting was recorded. It was also, there were participants in person, there were participants in Zoom. And Donnie from the consulting firm VHB gave a much longer introduction with help from myself and Tim Roach from Rockingham Planning Commission. Primarily what we wanted to do was highlight the fact that the climate action plan that many of you were champions for in getting the city to commit to taking on is intended to enable the city and other members of the community to address, mitigate, and adapt to climate change impacts over the coming decades, over up to 50 years. And so what it includes in order to do that is a review of previous efforts, the current greenhouse gas emissions inventories for both municipal operations and community activities, and then a look at climate resilience opportunities. And we'll also be looking at ambitious yet achievable goals and targets and setting some prioritized strategies to have a focus on cost effectiveness and climate justice. So we're trying to kind of do as much as we possibly can to address the climate crisis. We're trying to include people who in the past may have been excluded or not welcomed into the process, but we're also having to think about what the appetite is for what Portsmouth can spend and how you prioritize that. So we'll be helping with that over the coming months. And then working with everyone in the fall into the winter on phasing an implementation plan to look at short and long-term funding and implementation. Ultimately, we've set this up, and all of you are a testament to this, for ownership of the plan, ownership of the mitigation and adaptation strategies, because I think we all recognize that there's a lot of really positive energy and activity in the city that was there before we arrived and will be there long after we're gone. So we want to help with the launch of the plan and kind of the rally, the pep rally of sorts early in 2024, get people excited from lots of different sectors on implementing this plan. So the process, how and when we propose to do all this, and where you fit in as climate ambassadors is the next piece we wanted to provide an overview of tonight. You may recall seeing this project schedule at meeting 1. I just moved the where we are here a little bit further into May. And here we are doing the volunteer training, the official kind of volunteer training that we've talked about in the scope of work. Other stakeholder outreach has already begun. The first big group meeting has happened, and existing conditions investigation and crosswalk analysis is underway. Phase 1 is labeled community engagement, but phase 2 also has a significant amount of community engagement that continues through that. And then you'll see at the very bottom, final community presentation is actually also an engagement opportunity. It's being seen that way. And we'll sort out the details as we get closer to that event. We're about at the halfway mark of the phase 1 work. And in thinking about the tasks ahead, we have quite a bit of work that we'll be doing in phase 2, which will be primarily summer and fall, with the hope of having a draft plan for adoption by the end of the calendar year. And then any additional refinements in formatting can happen after that, and then rolling it out to the community can happen after that. So we've talked about outreach and engagement as being primarily these 2 pieces, getting the word out, and then longer, more meaningful engagement, which is why all of you are here tonight. So getting the word out are things you've likely already seen: project website, this sign that's pictured on the slide, and the flyers that got people out to meeting number 1, newsletter updates, social and print media, direct communications. Whenever any of you are talking to organizations, boards, committees, friends, family, those kinds of direct communications. Tabling at events is another direct communication. And the climate ambassadors, which I'll talk about in the next slide, working with community members who are interested to reach out deeper into the community than we normally can in a planning initiative such as this. If anyone's just joining us now, if you wouldn't mind just muting for now, and then we'll open it up to some questions as we go along. Just have a few slides before we break, and then go over the Ambassador's Guidebook. So meaningful engagement will, from our end as the consultants assisting the city, is online feedback. It's the 3 big public meetings, as well as a meeting with the Sustainability Committee. And then it's behind the scenes support of all of you as climate ambassadors. So what is a climate ambassador? One of the primary reasons we're here. All of you that are on Zoom tonight, and many other people who couldn't be here, and hopefully others that you'll cajole into being climate ambassadors along the way, are really going to help us reach and engage a broader representation of Portsmouth. That's the goal. I think we heard at the last couple of meetings, including meeting 1, the big kickoff meeting, that in some cases people don't necessarily feel like a meeting at City Hall is a place that they are comfortable or that they've been before. So we want to look at a variety of ways of getting out and having conversations with neighbors, organizations that have existing meetings, or new organizations, new gatherings, employers in the city, groups of employees in the city, seniors and youth. So getting a broader spectrum demographically, and frontline communities, people that might be experiencing aspects of climate change already, and might be really busy with their lives and not feeling like they have the time or the capacity to participate, or not feeling like this is the format that we often use in municipal work is the format they're comfortable with. And we're really open to your interpretation of others that we should be reaching out to broaden this. We're really seeing tonight is kind of a kickoff of the ambassador work. And so that's the purpose of doing this on Zoom and recording it and starting to get other people to help us to work on this outreach over the next couple months. So ambassadors aren't expected to go out and do this work in the next couple of weeks. We have a couple of months. We want to take the time and get out to the groups that you think you can reach or you're willing to try to reach. We want to welcome anyone that's on here tonight that hasn't already signed up to be a volunteer or a climate ambassador, or to get updates on the project, to visit the project website, which Kate and Peter have put up on the city's website. There's a link here. I will also, let's see if I can, I'll try to put it in the chat before we're done. Put the link in the chat. Other things. I think that's primarily it before we talk about the guide that we're going to make available to all. Questions? Questions from anyone? No, everyone's good. Okay, let me see. I can't see everybody, so let me just put.
Actually, sorry, I just thought of one.
Oh, please.
Can anyone become a climate ambassador at any point in this process? I mean, it's just a climate ambassador is somebody who wants to do these things. It's not a, you know, it doesn't matter if somebody's missed a few steps along the way, right? Is that what we're describing?
That's completely true, James. I think the most impactful will be in the next couple of months, because as you'll see with the guide, we want to bring some of those questions that we worked on with all of you at meeting one out to the broader community. But there will likely be other kinds of outreach that ambassadors can help us with later on in the process. So I would think you're correct. At any point in this process, we'll welcome people to come in and help, because we're also, we really kind of need climate ambassadors through implementation as well. So if anyone were to come in at the very last minute, we would welcome them with open arms and bring them up to speed and have them help find ways that they could contribute to implementation. So other questions? Was that helpful, James?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. All right, hearing none. Oh, I see something in the chat. Let's go look. Oh, perfect. Thanks, Kate. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this. And I'm going to pull up the actual guide, which I have. We're going to provide to you both as a PDF and as a Word doc, and I'll show you why. So give me 1 second. Here it comes. All right. Can everyone see that? The activity guide? Okay. So we're providing as a PDF and a Word document for the reasons that I'll cite. You may think of others. So that if you want to print it or use it on a tablet or computer, you have what you need to use it in a format that you want. I know some people would like to take notes real time when they're working with a group right into the document. You're welcome to do that. Others would rather handwrite their notes and take photos of them or type them up later. So we want to provide as much flexibility for you to do things in a style that you're comfortable with. And it also allows you to deputize other folks that are meeting with you to take notes in a way that's comfortable for them. So we're just trying to provide you with flexibility. This guide that I'll go over is intended to provide direction. It's not intended to limit the work you do, the scope of your questions. So just as an example, like Bill, if you were meeting with a transportation focus group and you wanted to focus on 1 or 2 of these questions, or you had another question that came up from the group, we would encourage you to run with it and get as much input as you can. You know your audience. And so it's not that every group has to do questions 1 through 7 the way we've presented it, but we want to provide you with some kind of scaffolding, and then you can decide as a group to deviate and get as much meaning as possible. Does that make sense? So you have the freedom to take it where you want to go. And there may be groups that you think this structure is too rigid and you just want to have a looser conversation and capture what you can. And I think that will still expand our outreach possibilities. Okay. The goal in the end is broader engagement, and that's why we want to provide kind of a spectrum of opportunities. So the guide is fairly simple. We just need to have a way for you to know what we're thinking you're out there doing, and for us to capture whatever it is that you've done. So the way we've structured this is for every group you were to meet with, if you decided to meet with more than one, you'd put your name of the group, where you met and when. If there was a contact person, you could put them in there as well, and give us some sense of who you met with, how many people were there, any other kind of descriptors would be welcome. So just basic what happened and when. The next, we've included some notes for those that want them. Just a little bit about some meeting tips as far as creating a comfortable environment for those that you're meeting with. And notes are a good reminder for me to use my own notes. But so some tips that you may find are helpful, feel free to do other things as well. Encouraging people to participate in a round robin fashion. You can let people just, bring things up popcorn style. You can go more formally around the room. We talked about the note taking, whatever is best for you, as long as they get back to us. We're not very worried about spelling. It'd be helpful if we can read what you wrote, if it's handwritten. That would be really handy. And then we've identified Kate as a person to collect the notes, and then we'll work with Kate. We'll take the notes and we'll make sure they get summarized as we did from the first big meeting one. Some language that you may want to think about for a welcome. Feel free to personalize, come up with your own way of welcoming everybody. And then, one way of getting people engaged, just thinking about introductions and, biggest climate concern. What's the big thing that they're there for? And that might give you a sense, if it's a group you're not familiar with, what's on people's minds, where the conversation may go, and maybe at what level of thinking about the climate crisis folks are at. If they're seasoned, experienced folks like many of the folks here on the Zoom tonight, or if they're folks that are excited or scared and just coming to the conversation and participating for the first time. So the first 5 or so minutes is really just the welcome and introductions. We are suggesting just a short overview explaining exactly what the project is about, what Portsmouth Climate Future is, and acknowledging a couple of key things about the climate crisis. This is another place where you can also add in, knowing your audience and knowing some of the work that you're doing, feel free to add in some other observations or facts that you think are important. So these items were shared at the meeting one on May 4th. So it touches on, the huge environmental challenge that the climate crisis presents. It touches on the rise in temperature and impacts of future warming in the second bullet. And then the role that municipalities and other members of the community can play in addressing the climate crisis, in mitigating greenhouse gas emissions, and building overall climate resilience, and in thinking about opportunities for adaptation and preparedness going forward. And so just giving people a sense for like the breadth of what the work that we're all doing together, and then a little bit about how their input will inform this climate action plan, the value that it presents. So we figured, 5 minutes or so to do that. I think overall with the guide, the way we laid it out, it would take about an hour. We used less time for meeting one. You were all compressed. You were the guinea pig. I think it was probably a little tight for some of the groups based on a couple questions, took more time to go around the table and let everyone share. So these are just estimates for you to consider. So the questions are primarily the same 7 questions that we worked with you all on May 4th. So question 1's the big one with 15 minutes. And we did make sure this one does reflect both the city, as in government and operations, and the community. So you can talk about both, or based on who you're meeting with, focus on one, if that makes sense. But thinking about, what efforts can be made to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. Question 2, focus primarily on barriers that the participants are facing. So the folks you're meeting with, things that they're facing personally. And I think through this conversation, as we saw at meeting 1, they may start talking about some of the solutions they identified under question 1. So solutions may come back and they may be able to identify what the barriers are. related to whether it's cost, funding, or other factors. And then as you get to question 3, we fall into this about 5 minutes. It's just, can't take a deep dive. Otherwise, your time commitment and the time commitment of the participants gets to be a pretty big one. But this is where you may want to focus on some questions more than others, depending on who you're meeting with. So question 3 is really, how aggressive should the city be in its pursuit of greenhouse gas emission reductions? And how aggressive should the targets be at the community scale? This is one of the places where we added a little bit of something new based on what we learned at meeting 1. But we talked in the second line about how aggressive should we be in budgeting for reduction of targets to get a sense from people. And then if there should be a difference at all between the targets set by the city and targets set by others. And then the last 4 questions, 5 minutes each. So the first, question 4 being climate hazards presented today that affect you or others. So starting to think about across the city, how it may be different, and then priorities to address. Question 5, focusing on whether or not the city should prioritize its climate action and how the city should prioritize its climate action investments. So greenhouse gas emission reduction, cost effectiveness, the potential to improve the community well-being, economic benefits. We talked about co-benefits at meeting 1, you may recall. So where there are co-benefits to accomplish climate adaptation or resilience and other things that are meaningful in the city, equity and justice. And then thinking about also the impact on the annual budget in aligning with the other communities around you or the region at large. Question 6 is focused on, are there identifiable population groups that you're worried about or participants are worried about? Is there a way for them to contribute or benefit from the city's climate action efforts? And then question 7, how can the city promote education and awareness of its climate action goals and activities moving forward? We've included at the bottom here the link to the website again, so that in a meeting, if people are asking or wanting to look on their own devices, it's there. If people are wanting to follow up in any way on their own and they want to contact Kate to get in touch with anyone from the consulting team or to get materials, that is there as well. So with that overview of the guide, I'm going to pause for a minute, see if there are any questions. I see Bill posted a question in the chat. Suggest co-benefits be flexible. So question 5, suggest co-benefits be flexible, will depend on sector source or emissions. All right, is Bill still here? Or did we lose him already? He had to leave at 6:30.
I'm still here, and I think you've got it very well to stress the co-benefits, and that's mitigation as well as adaptation and a priority for climate justice. But I think on any of these, and of course I'm thinking of transportation, the co-benefits could include safety, for example, for walking and biking, or affordability for public transit. So I think that many of these recommendations that will work their way into the cap will be things that really will require broad-based support. And I think by demonstrating that not only does it produce climate benefits, but it also produces other things that are important to the community.
I 100% agree. I think the idea of co-benefits is a way to get a lot more people to rally around this work going forward. So thank you. James?
Yeah, just looking at the wording here, it's like, one of the ideas here is to try and take this to include other groups around the city, whether that's young people, seniors, or
yes,
just people who are less engaged with climate matters now. So looking at the wording, I'm realizing probably have to reword this every single time depending on the audience. I don't know if you already have like different language samples that we can cut and paste here. Like question 5 in particular, there's like quite a few ideas in there that might be new to people. But I think there's definitely scope for simplifying these things depending on the audience. But I just wanted to point that out, that if there is already, simplified language around that, that would be great to share.
We don't have that. We could talk about what that would look like. And I think maybe one of the ways to go forward is if you have a group in mind that you're going to work with and you want to workshop it a little bit, we could work together and then share it with the other climate ambassadors. Like, we're meeting with a group of students. Here's a version we came up with. Allison?
Yeah, I was wondering if we have a climate denier in the audience, how to deal with that.
I think listening is a good way to deal with it. Do others have thoughts on that? I'm going to stop sharing so I can see all your faces.
I mean, I've got thoughts. I don't know if they're suitable for a public recording, but
All right, James, mute yourself.
Samesies. I'm gonna mute myself too.
I would say there's we've seen there's multiple flavors of climate denialism. Like, there's the old school in terms of this isn't happening, and that's almost laughable because that's a really old-fashioned way to go about denialism. And I don't think somebody running that line would get much support in the room. But the more sophisticated denialism now seems to be around poo-pooing the solutions, or saying these solutions can't work, no one will go for this, it will cost too much, or it will prevent progress, and so on. So I'd be out and out denialism, I think might even hopefully be rare, but people sort of like asking, well, what about this, what about that, and trying to undermine it. I think that's a totally valid thing to look out for. And yeah, I don't know what the answer is exactly, but it's certainly like the fossil fuel funded denialism movement has moved on to trying to shoot down the progress and the solutions from what I've read anyway. So I guess having your facts or asking to engage with people offline. I don't know.
Looks like Effie and then Bill.
Yeah, I think that most group processes I work with, we start with ground rules. And maybe I would even do that quickly, especially with groups that are used to being marginalized. So if there's someone going on about a very negative oppositional kind of point of view, I would remind him or her of time limits and say, we want to make sure everybody has time to talk. I heard you say, and reflect back what they said, let's move on to the next question or the next speaker, just to keep it moving and really be an active facilitator.
I can add a couple of the ground rules to the meeting tips if people want to use them.
Yeah,
Bill,
I think that'd be great.
Bill, because I know you're going to leave.
Yeah, just picking up on James' point on the denialism. I think a non-destructive type of denialism that I'm almost certain we're going to encounter is one arguing, well, let's put the resources into adaptation because we see the problems. Let's take care of the sea level rise, seawalls, bridges, roads, evacuation plans. But why should we spend time on greenhouse gas reductions when I personally can't see any specific benefit, but it's really part of a global effort? I mean, I think some talking points to prepare for that, because I'm sure we're going to get it, and it may be harder to deal with that one than the outright really stubborn type of denialism.
Those are good suggestions. Thank you. Barbara?
Yeah, I was going to say, so I don't know what I haven't been in on this until the last meeting, but one thing for climate change deniers I've seen done is just to say that's not what we're here to talk about. Seems to have worked, and to kind of be more explicit about what we are here to talk about. And I've seen that work a couple of times, just to be kind of firm about it and be considerate of people's time. And the other one is if people do have other things, some of it is about discussing it too. I mean, letting people be heard and noting, if they have challenges about adaptation versus mitigation and things like that. I mean, I don't know that's what you want to get out of this process, but I would think that would be valuable.
These are all good suggestions. And I think another argument for the co-benefits concept and introducing, well, okay, maybe you can't get on board with some of the things we're talking about tonight because climate change isn't the reason you want to get on board, but there are other benefits to the economy, to people's health that you could endorse. other thoughts or questions about the project overall or the activity guide? Yeah, Effie.
I'm not sure this is the time for it, but I just had a call with Bright Action about the community platform we're trying to promote. And we were talking about meeting with church groups, land trusts, the kind of organizations, garden clubs that we had that Jess really did a lot of work to bring to the sustainability fair. So I think we need to coordinate when people are talking to groups. I think it would be easy for community groups to get confused about which climate group is this. And I think this offers an opportunity to promote Bright Action more than just a link on the website. And I think it's important to do that. So I'm not sure how to weave that in. I was at the first meeting, so I know the questions and how that works in groups. But if people have ideas about that or how we can coordinate it, I think this would be a good place to talk about.
It's a perfect time in the meeting to bring that up. So just
Right.
today, Caitlin and I started to look at how we could add to the Google Sheet all the volunteer opportunities that many of you signed up for tabling or you signed up to get flyers out. So we're adding a column, right, Kate, for people to put in who they're meeting with and when.
Right. So there already was sort of, I guess it was kind of maybe hard to see in the Google Sheet that I shared with everyone, and I'll pop it in the chat in a minute too. So all the way to the right, there still is a column for the tabling events that we're going to do. So that's like farmers markets. We signed up for a booth at Riverfest with the Gundalo Company. And then, to the left in that Google Sheet, you start out with the different community groups that people are reaching out to, the different neighborhood groups, and then social media groups, who's sort of in charge of those platforms. I think we've had a couple people input their names and where they've sort of signed up. And then there's also a column where you can mark off that you've reached out already, or you're going to reach out again, or if you plan to reach out, just put your name in. But if the Google, I know Google can sometimes be a little bit confusing and it's a Google Sheet. So if anyone's having trouble accessing that, they can always send me an email or give me a call and we can talk through different opportunities and where you can fit in and what sort of different dates there are available to do opportunities, if that'll be more helpful. I don't know what's the best platform other people use, but I thought Google might be good, but it might not be. So
The one change we might want to make, Kate, before we send the link back out to everybody, is somehow differentiating these kind of climate conversations that the ambassadors are having. And
That's a good
so
point.
to Effie's point, if James and I both want to go talk to the same group, one of us goes into the Google Sheet and sees the other one is already there. We can either offer to go together, which would be wonderful. You can team up. But then if Bright Action wants to keep watching that and see opportunities and make sure that we're not stepping on each other's toes, we'd be all using the same platform. Does that work for people?
I was thinking that there would be a way to add Bright Action to the discussion rather than having two separate meetings, because Portsmouth's a small city and we're going to be talking about the same faith-based communities. There's only 2 or 3 garden clubs that I know of. There's only a couple of land trusts, so.
I was saying the same. I wasn't suggesting
okay.
I wasn't suggesting you have a second meeting. I was suggesting what meetings are also being organized. So if you want to team up.
Okay, team up. I didn't hear that part. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Because I'm assuming unless you have something that's fairly boilerplate that people could also share for meetings you can't go to, we could share that with the ambassadors. If there's a sign-up sheet or description, knowing you can't go to however many tens of meetings end up happening. But I think it's a place to also maybe be in this list that Kate's helping us just add to, is a place to maybe be inspired to see the types of groups that people are meeting with, maybe see holes. If you think that no one's reaching out to maybe lower income housing neighborhoods, or no one's reaching out to certain faith groups and you want to fill that hole, that'd be great. James?
Yeah, just a question about Effie's question is, the Bright Action folks are Portsmouth Climate Action doing their own separate marketing plan around Bright Action that is being done by some people who aren't climate ambassadors. So it's kind of flipping the question around, really, is like how to coordinate from that point of view. Particularly since Bright Action seems to really favor the neighborhood model. And my thought about this spreadsheet is that there's like a map version of this, right? It's like, how is our coverage doing? You know, we need to send somebody down the east side. No one's spoken to the east side folks or whatever, right? So just I guess continued. I know there's quite a few Bright Action orientated people on this call, so hopefully that will take care of itself. But just want to put that out there.
Is there a good way that we can, I know we're already sort of calling out the city webpage for Portsmouth Climate Future in the activity book or the guide, and that brings up Bright Action because it's linked on the website, but is there a way we can incorporate that as like a question in the guidebook? Or if that's something that as ambassadors, we're just bringing an iPad or something to the meeting that has Bright Action up so people can look at it while they're answering these questions? Something like that.
Yeah, I don't have enough direct experience. And like I say, I was just on a call with them the hour before. But, you know, a sign up could take like 2 minutes without having people add all their household information. And then we would have their name and emails. So maybe we could make that a part of the script somehow. And they wouldn't, I mean, obviously they would not be required to sign up. They could pass, but that would be great. I mean, people could do it on their cell phones. Sometimes Bright Action gives out an LED light bulb or something to signify, or maybe one of those neat saber pant leg garters, whatever you call those, glow in the dark things so you don't get your pant leg in your gears. But that would be great to really make it part of the process. And I think people would like it because they would feel like they were doing something and becoming part of a group. I think we're up to 42 households now on Bright Action. So it is growing.
I'm happy to work with Kate to try to add something to the guide at the end with, I mean, we have the link to the website, but specifically some language about Bright Action. And then if there's somebody in attendance that wants to speak to it even more so. But it would be nice to end on a kind of positive note with your group to, you know, if you'd like to start participating and you'd like to be part of these conversations, you know, outside of the climate action plan, there's this other wonderful tool that's been developed.
Yeah, and then maybe contact information so that people invariably would probably have questions.
Okay, that's a great suggestion. We'll do that.
Great, thanks.
James.
Yeah, so just going back on questions 1, 2, and 3.
Yep.
I know my table had like some feedback on those particular questions or like issues that we ran into and how to interpret them. And Effie, I ran into you and we sort of shared some similar thoughts. I think it's I could use a bit of clarification about how we direct that question. Because certainly we had questions about them when we were attempting them. For instance, question 2, like barriers to personal progress. I think everybody in attendance at that flipped that to, well, I don't have any barriers, but I foresee these barriers by other people. So that was straight away like a split in the question. Do we need to keep that focused on people's own real barriers to accomplishing these things, or do we allow it to, you know, get more speculative? Mm-hmm. Question 1 and 3, I think, had puzzled some folks in terms of, well, how aggressive should we be? Where should we put our efforts? It's like, well, what's the greatest bang for the buck? I don't know. I'm not a planner. So some of the answers we were getting back were, well, I don't care. Just do the most impactful things, please. So kind of became a circular argument in that way. So I'm not suggesting any solutions here, but it's just like, those are the types of questions I would anticipate in a public focus type brainstorm session. And was wondering if you had any like further advice on how to, you know, sort of direct people if they get really hung up on those particulars.
Peter, did you unmute because you want to say something or?
No, I was just gonna say some positive things about Bright Action, as well. I think it's a great idea, but, I have something to say, but I think I'll wait if there was a question from James, I think I'll wait and say something after.
I mean, my only thought, James, is that we provide an alternative to questions 1 and 3. That there be one really general question for the layperson that you could ask. And if you have a group such as yourselves that are way past those initial conversations and you want to jump into the meatier, as long as you're picking it apart, whatever meaning you're making out of it, we just want to see what you come up with. But we could take a stab at a couple basic alternatives. And then for question 2, I think saying you or others, and whether people choose to talk about others because it's less personal and it's more comfortable, or whether they don't actually, they're the choir, they're making the changes, they don't see barriers legitimately, but they can imagine barriers for friends, family, other folks they know in the community. It'd be good to know that. Does that work?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Peter.
I was just gonna maybe trying to get a sense of where people might want to take their climate ambassador, or what the role would be or who they would talk with. The reason I'm asking is I'm just trying to get a sense of, I feel like we are doing a good job getting the people that are tuned in or plugged in to climate change and sustainability. But I'm wondering, Kate's got some ideas for tabling at different events, and we have events that we'll take things to, and people hopefully will take it to friends and neighbors and that kind of thing. But I'm wondering how it seems like the students didn't really show up at our meeting, and it'd be nice if we could try to engage on the group. So maybe I'm just wondering if we should brainstorm a little bit about where we could take this information and get feedback from people and get a few more people engaged than sort of the usual group we're working with. Maybe just talk about that a little bit. Because I was thinking, the Sustainability Committee eco clubs are really engaged and want to be engaged, but I want to figure out how to plug them in, I guess, as one group I'm thinking about.
Go ahead, Allison.
Well, I noticed that there's a neighborhood committee meeting coming up on May 18th. And is that just the neighborhood committee meeting, or is that a meeting that is for the different neighborhoods? It's just that, I thought that I don't know enough about it. I don't belong to a neighborhood group for some reason. My street's left out, but I'm just wondering if that might be an opportunity to, I noticed that John Tabor is going to be talking about community power, if there should have been another agenda item that was something about Portsmouth's climate future that should be on that. And I personally was thinking about going to the senior center and trying to find out if there's maybe an activity group or something that meets on a regular basis that I could either go before or after and talk to some seniors that might show up at the community center there. So that was one thing that I was thinking about.
I don't know if anyone has an answer on the neighborhood meeting.
I'm going to try. I'm not so plugged in with the neighborhood meetings. I've heard they're pretty protective of who they let speak, and we have to be plugged in with them, it seems like. But I can ask around a little bit and see. I know at different times they've invited people to their group meetings. I don't know how open they are to people asking to come, but that's something I can ask about because I haven't engaged with them much myself.
Back to your point, Peter, about the who and the where. I think when we had a volunteer coordination meeting at the library, I know a lot of you were at that meeting as well, and the result was this Google spreadsheet that Kate has created, and it has a lot of the groups in there under, in some cases, tabling, in some cases, flyering, in some cases, just kind of general outreach. But we probably want to revisit all those as potentials for these conversations, these climate conversations. Go ahead, Jess.
Well, I'm also thinking like kids and schools, and we are coming into a really hard time considering that it's summer and everybody's dispersing in different directions. So it might be a lot harder to engage some of these people. Like I initially thought PTAs and those kinds of things, but I'm wondering maybe if it's something worth trying to coordinate with the rec department a little bit, like if we could table at swim lessons, 1 or 2 mornings a week when all those families are in and out of there all morning doing swim lessons at the outdoor pool or other spots like that where we might find people who might be harder to find in the summer months.
I'm glad you brought that up, Jess, because I was thinking about that today too. And swim lessons is a great idea. And I was also thinking Camp Fun Stuff starts every week. It's a new set of kids, meaning a new set of parents. And that starts in mid to late June. And we could just, I know they already did signups, but stuff like that, we can just go sit at the community campus and have a table outside when parents are coming to pick up their kids or drop them off in the morning, maybe just for an hour on a Monday or a Friday, whenever. But something like that involving the rec department, that gets a huge group of kids and parents involved from all over the city. So it's a great idea.
I'd be happy to help with that. One of my good friends is the director of the rec committee, and another works in their finance program or finance department.
Great.
Hey, could you talk a little bit about how that would work? So if this is mom or dad drop their kid off ready to get in their car and go to the next thing, we can't do the whole interview with them. So are we setting something up for later with them, or I'm not clear on what you're thinking.
I think something like, I mean, the specific reaching out to groups is going to be targeted with the guidebook and sort of having longer conversations. But these tabling events, I'm thinking, especially something like that, not really big events like Chowderfest or Riverfest, we just go table and have links to the website, maybe have flyers that have links on them and just hand them out really quickly, say, hey, check out Portsmouth Climate Action, like Portsmouth Climate Future. Just quickly getting the word out, giving out flyers, making sure people have something to grab and go. And if they want to stop and spend some time, then we can talk. But just that group is critical. But you're right, it might be a pretty fast moving group.
It might be a source for some new climate ambassadors too. Someone might say, I'd like to follow up with you. I'd be happy to get a group together.
And should we maybe address that with some sort of, I mean, we have a handout to get them to the website, but is there something that we could do that would give them, like we did at the sustainability fair, a survey they could take, scan this and do this survey, which kind of answers, we could do like a little bit of a streamlined version of our questions, and we're going to get more feedback just by talking to people and just talking to people about the climate action plan in general. If they have a minute, if they get early to pick up their kid or something, I think could be a benefit.
Alyssa, I saw your mic go off. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, I was just going to chime in. Alyssa Murphy, my team was part of the recent recreation study, and we did set up a sort of boards at the community campus, and we got a lot of very positive feedback from families. And it was sort of stickers, like boards, asking different questions. That was maybe a different way of getting input, but families universally said, wow, this is really great that we have this opportunity here. So I was just going to reiterate that that's probably a good spot.
So putting the tabling materials up and having a feedback mechanism could generate some feedback.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, James.
So regarding the schools, is there any like higher level or official stuff going on there in terms of the city talking to the school board or the principals or anything like that? Or is this always intended to be a sort of grassroots type effort in terms of getting climate ambassadors invited into those settings?
That's a good question. I don't think we've really talked about that at that level, other than maybe at the sustainability committee with students or the school board member.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm wondering in a larger sense is like, how is the city sort of gonna, which other functions of the city could come into play here outside of the bits that are just targeted on working on the climate action plan? Are there other avenues that could be used to get a foot in the door, for want of a better expression? And who would sign off on that?
That's a good question. I would think probably the school superintendent and the school board. The school's, a little bit separate than the municipal government. But there's certainly support on the school board. I guess it's a matter of trying to figure out what we're asking, or who would be asking.
Back to the comment that you made, Jess, about kids and the end of the school year. And when you mentioned the rec department, I'm wondering if there are rec programs where children could be talked to, like where there's kids there during the day in the summertime and some groups. I mean, that'd be a fun group to talk to. And obviously some of the material, James, you'd probably want to just pull some of it out and just talk about climate change in really general terms. But that might help us, get a different demographic that we don't normally get. All right, Allison, and then Jess.
I'm wondering if maybe, since it is late in the school year, it would give teachers the summer to plan to have in the fall some sort of classroom activity, science related maybe, where they did just what we did in our first meeting. They had the kids get together. They gave them an overview of what they would mean regarding the words in our ambassador survey, basically, to have them think of the things that might be most important to them and try to engage them that way. So actually have it be a plan where teachers in, say, middle school could bring this as part of a classroom activity to the students.
I think that's wonderful if some of you know some of those teachers, or if we could figure out that avenue to the schools. But yeah, we need someone who's willing to take that on and share the materials with them, like you're saying, so that they have time.
I'd be glad to reach out.
It'd be great.
Yeah, Allison, I can probably point you to a sixth grade teacher who I know does a lot of environmental, a unit already, and she
Super.
would be a great contact.
That would be
Thanks.
awesome.
Allison, I'd be happy to help you.
Thank you, Jess.
What a great group. You have a good can-do attitude. Yeah, Jess, sorry.
Well, now I have two things. Allison, I love your idea and I'm happy to help. I would also say that might be an opportunity to get high school students involved, because I know one of the goals of the Eco Club was that they wanted to help to create, I don't know if curriculum's the right word, but sort of be mentors and guides to some of the younger kids. So that might be a way to get high school kids to be ambassadors if they were going in and having these conversations with some of the younger grades. And then Steve, to your point, I wonder if it's also worth reaching out to some of the nonprofit and other organizations that do camps around here. I mean, Seacoast Science Center, I know, is hugely active, and Gundalo and Forest Kids, and a lot of their program is kind of built into stewardship and caring for the planet. And so maybe there might be an opportunity for one of us or some of us or something to just come in for a little bit and engage in some way.
That's great. Yeah, let's add it to the list and see if we get some takers from this group, from other people that watch the Zoom after tonight or come along. And this is another place where I think we won't think of every group to meet with, or every neighborhood group to meet with. But as you think of folks that or organizations that we can reach out to them and we can encourage them to be climate ambassadors or to host a conversation. And so this can continue to kind of have that snowball effect over the next few months. Yeah, James.
Just a quick thought. I was on the Portsmouth City site the other day, and I was looking at the Coastal Resilience Initiative work. And in the past, they've produced great sort of projected sea level rise impact maps, like which streets are going to flood and when, given different amounts of sea level rise or storm surges and so on. I already thought that was a really good way to engage like frontline impacted communities by presenting those maps. There is this question about like what can we do to reduce greenhouse gas, but there's also the, you know, I don't know what it means to me personally or to my children if they, you know, inherit this house. So seeing the actual local impact could be very well impactful. So is there anyone from the CRI that we can call on to, you know, for instance, source neighborhood by neighborhood maps if we're doing some neighborhood outreach? Also, you know, we don't want to go in with like completely unrealistic scenarios about sea level rise. So I thought it would probably be a pretty good line to have an agreement amongst ourselves as to which of the sea level rise projections we actually go with. Is it 7 feet or is it 18 feet? And you know, by what year?
13.5, I'd say. I can help with that for sure, or Kate as well. But yeah, I can help with that, and we could put together a neighborhood map or a localized map if it's a specific group. That's easy to do, and we could give you the right messaging for what maps to look at and what it means.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and there's a lot of tools online that you can use just to talk to people about adaptation strategies, things they can do to make their house more resilient, or their block or their building. So there's a lot there.
That'd be great, Peter and Kate. I could follow up with you on that. I'm just already starting to see part of the website is like climate ambassador resources with links to a lot of these things, and then you can pick and choose. We can point people to them. Yeah, Barbara.
This might be a silly question, but a lot of these groups you're talking about overlap with beyond the community. So how are you incorporating in comments from everybody, you know, no matter where they're from, kind of thing on this?
Yes, we're taking all the information in and we're providing it all to VHB, I think, to inform the planning process and the plan itself. And so I'm guessing there's going to be a tremendous amount of overlap, but there may be some new information that comes out from some of these groups too.
So even if they're residents in other communities or out of state and things like that, you don't need to know that at all. Okay, great. Thanks.
I mean, I don't think so. Ultimately, you all decide, but if they are somehow members of the community and they care about Portsmouth and they're willing to participate, it seems valuable. All right, we're at about the 1 hour mark. Should we call it good there for tonight's training?
Yeah, I think that's great.
All right, I guess I wanted just in wrapping up, just to thank everybody for the time tonight, for the suggestions for changes. So what we'll do is we'll update the guide, and we will process this recording and pull together some of your other suggested materials. And you'll get an email from Kate probably sometime in the next week or so. So give us some time to work on this. Kate has to go play kickball right now, so she can't work on this right now. Yeah, Allison.
Do we have a list of the people's emails that are on this call so that we could communicate with one another? Like, I don't have Alyssa's Murphy's information, so.
Yep, and we can add emails to the email list that we have going, but we can also share them if that's going to be helpful. I believe I do have Alyssa's because I think you were on the email list. Jessica, I am assuming your last name is Dolan. Is that correct? Okay. I think I have you on my email list, and then I know Annie Pubo is here. She's using the Sabre account. We have her email, but I think for the most part, this is a familiar group, and hopefully we can grow it. But I can send out everyone's emails again, just so we're all familiar and can talk to each other.
That's wonderful. Excellent. So we'll follow up with materials. If you have questions along the way, please reach out. Like if you forget about this for a little while and then you're like, oh wait, I'm a climate ambassador, I think I have to go meet with some people, and you need to be re-engaged in the process, just reach out. Otherwise, we will maybe reach out to you if we haven't heard from you in a while and see if there's something we can do just to support you or help you match up with somebody else who wants to do some of this as well. But this is exciting. We'll see how big we can grow this group and how many people we can talk to.
All right, thanks, Steve.
Jess.
I just have one quick question because I've already been asked this. Do we know when the next community forum is yet? Has that been determined? Because a couple people have already asked me that they really enjoyed the first one.
Great.
Good.
All
Yeah,
right.
I
So
wish,
no.
wish we had an answer.
Okay.
Excellent. All right. Thank you all. I'm going to stay here for a moment and save the chat and close out this recording, but I appreciate